because we, great, great. Because someone may want to, who can't make it, I noticed that we only have 8, and we have many more on the roster, so some folks maybe can't get in or are busy or forgot about it. So let's record this. Thank you.
Okay, next. This is a particularly bad picture.
We'll go backwards.
It's going. Hang on. There we are. I could not get a better picture of this, I'm sorry to say.
That's a good picture.
Of Newcastle, yeah.
What is Seton Sluice? Can somebody explain what it is?
This is sluice, isn't it?
Yeah,
Can you explain what it is?
Went backwards.
I think I'm right in saying Bob will know more than me, but I think this was a particularly tragic mining disaster in the late 19th century, I think, and it was a single shaft pit, and was, I think, one of the last ones ever built, because after that they realized that it was so dangerous just to have a single shaft, and a beam, you know, that was involved in lifting both the coal and the miners in and out. I think the beam broke, and you know, it was a great many men were stuck underground, and they were alive, but there was no way they could be reached because there was just a single shaft into the pit. Have I got that about right, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's Hartley. Is it Hartley? I believe it's Hartley, and yeah, it's famous. It 1870s, I believe, and 1860s, and it influenced American legislation and world legislation about the need for 2 shafts.
Yeah,
and we know about this in our own Avondale disaster near Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, because the breaker, the coal processing plant, was directly over the shaft. And once that one shaft is burnt or obstructed, they're trapped. So after Hartley and then Avondale, you had to have 2 shafts. I think it's Hartley, but it's not ringing a total bell with me. It's in one of my books. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There were 200 men and boys trapped underground, and I think very few of them. It was almost impossible to get them out because they couldn't use cages because the shaft was obstructed by the broken beam. I probably haven't got the details completely right, but
that's right.
As Bob said, it was in the end the stimulus that persuaded governments and mine owners that a single shaft was incredibly risky, and thereafter I think all pits had to have 2 shafts. So it was very significant, I think, in mining history.
And of course, here we are now in Newcastle, and one of the famous bridges there in Newcastle.
And that's the museum on the left. Or is it a conference center? Is it both? Anyway, it's a famous building in downtown Newcastle, and it's right along the river. This is a beautiful stretch here. I'm sure we'll see that.
And this is Seaham again, where Jan was suggesting that we had a stop there, and she's going to be talking to you about the mines that were in that area. Thank you, Beth.
big mine exporting port, Seam. It was a complete environmental disaster. You're seeing it cleaned up there. It was one of the worst environmental disasters in Britain from years and years and years of throwing coal waste there. And but now it looks pretty nice. They've done a tremendous job cleaning up a lot of the environmental problems in the north. So of course, we're in the north, and the north is everything, because this is the home of the Industrial Revolution. And the north and the south talk about two Englands, and of course Wales and Scotland have their own coal mining, but the north of England is where the coal mines were. In Newcastle, or as they will say it, Newcastle, emphasis on the second syllable. We would say Newcastle, emphasis on the first. There's a Newcastle, Pennsylvania, but they will say Newcastle, and they've got that Geordie dialect, and it's a whole culture.
Well, Jan Williams is a Geordie to the tips of her fingers and toes, so she'll be a great person to talk to you, and I'm sure you'll understand her. The accent is strong, but you can understand her still.
And then this is where you're going to be staying when you leave Scotland, in the northeast. Is a little village called Blanchland. And it's a very attractive little place to wander around, and you're going to be staying in the Lord Crew. And that's the Lord Crew.
And are we near Newcastle now? I'm sorry, Janet?
It's about 30 minutes from Newcastle.
Okay.
Why you're not in Durham this time is because of the graduation and all the accommodation, because we moved the dates forward to June and the graduation were on, so we couldn't get accommodation in Durham. So. But I don't think you'll be very disappointed in Blanchland. It's a gorgeous little village.
And it's not a great trek from the hotel into Newcastle. It's not a great trek into Durham either. We had a group staying there. Oh gosh, was it 2018, Jan? And they did, yeah. And I went on the bus from there to Durham, and I think it was half an hour, 40 minutes. It wasn't a long road trip. And it's a great place to stay. It's a very old building, and as I say, we've used it quite a bit. We would have had you in Durham if we could, but it was one of those things. I can remember many years ago, Jan and I tried to get accommodation in Washington, DC when there was graduation going on, and the nearest we could get was on the coast. We couldn't actually get anywhere in Washington, DC for love nor money. But we had a very pleasant stay. Where was it we stayed, Jan?
The Naval, Arlington.
No, not Arlington.
No.
Annapolis.
Yeah, we stayed in Annapolis.
Oh,
Because we simply could not get any accommodation on that particular night in Washington, DC. And
That's in Washington.
My son was at Durham University, and I can remember it was extremely difficult when he graduated, and I was just going on my own. So,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Beamish.
Here we are. You're going to be spending some time in Beamish. And here we are, Durham.
There.
Beautiful.
Go back to that picture.
Yeah. So
This looks very interesting.
yeah.
From the pictures that I looked at to try and find one to put on the PowerPoint, this looks really interesting.
Yeah.
To me.
It's people have been to Wales. It's like St Fagans or in
Williamsburg.
It's the same type of thing. It gives you the feeling of how people lived in Victorian times.
And a lot of buildings moved from elsewhere and rebuilt and reconstructed in the museum. I mean, some of them would have been there anyway, but some of them have moved elsewhere, as with St Fagans, just outside Cardiff. It's something people have been doing for the last 40 or 50 years, and it seems to work very well.
And there's a pit village there. I think it was built around the pit village.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and there is a coal mine tour. It's a drift
Oh, of course there
mine
is.
where you go in right in straight flat into the pit.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Didn't know that, Bob. I'll check that one out. Thank you. And of course, this is UNESCO site in Durham, the cathedral.
This is one of the, I'm so glad we're going to be, I hope we do this. This is
Yeah,
the, you know, the 10th, 12th century Durham Cathedral. I don't know if it was started by William the Conqueror, or I think maybe one of his successors, but it's really a tremendous Norman architecture, you know, the Normans, William the Conqueror architecture, which was quite Romanesque. And the Venerable Bede, if you've ever heard of the Venerable Bede, never quite made it to sainthood, I gather, but he's buried in there, and he has his own chapel. It's beautiful. He wrote the history of the ecclesiastical history of England in I think in the 6th or 7th century. But it's a really wonderful, beautiful historical church, right on the Durham University campus, really, right near the castle, which is a dormitory. I wanted us to stay in that castle originally, but we never did do that. But I'm glad we're going to spend an hour here and get a tour of the really, this is one of the oldest churches you're going to find in England.
And it's as Bob says, it's right on the top of one of the hills in Durham, and the view of it from all over the place is absolutely fabulous. It's you know, really prominent position. Unfortunately, you're not using the train, but one of the best views of the cathedral is as you come into the station, which is also at that sort of level. From London, you see the cathedral, and it's an absolutely fabulous view of it, but it's pretty good from lots of other places too.
Durham University is the third oldest university in England after Oxford and Cambridge, and then it's Durham.
Yep.
okay.
At the pit.
When we leave,
Pit is in
the
Wales.
Lord crew will journey that morning to the National Coal Museum of England, and that's about an hour's drive from Blanchland. Do you know
There's a-
anybody here, Bob?
Yeah, there's a coal mine tour here,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and a wonderful museum. And again, my good friend Margaret Fall, who I've been in touch with just lately for her book, which will include the Anthracite Heritage Museum and many others in this country and all over the world. She's either going to meet us and talk to us. I mean, she has agreed in the past, or she'll have someone, but former miners do the tour. It's not the greatest tour. It's not the big pit, but then again, nothing in the UK is the Welsh big pit.
Is
And
this,
I'm looking forward to personally escorting the landmessers down there.
No, only one landmesser.
is this a private museum, or is this something like the Smithsonian? Is this a national museum, or public or private? You know,
I can answer that. The Scottish, and the English, this is the English, and the Welsh are all government funded museums, like the Anthracite Heritage Museum in Scranton. So these are not, and you know, the famous Railroad Museum in York, which is a fantastic museum, that's government. Most of the Beamish is a private nonprofit.
Okay.
It's an award-winning museum. Beamish has won many awards, European awards. It's big. I mean, it's really big. But that's private nonprofit. The rest of them are going to be going to just about all our government run, sponsored.
Okay, and here we come for your next accommodation in York at the Hilton.
Oh, that's a nice street.
Quite well central, easy to walk about, beautiful city of York. All its Roman walls. It's got the best completed Roman walls in the UK.
Yeah.
And that's the Shambles. I'm sure you've all heard about the Shambles.
Medieval street, ready to fall over.
Nearly meeting. They say that in some of them, they're so close that from one building to another, you could shake hands.
Yeah. And again, this is the site of the world famous York or Yorkshire, I guess it is, Railroad Museum. So if you're a railroader, this is the place to go. With all due respect to our steam town in Scranton. Steam town is very good, but not in this league.
Now, Bob, have we got the right house this time on the itinerary?
Is this Hartford House?
Yeah,
I can't really tell from here. Quick,
No.
it looks-
I think I'd put Castle Howard last time and I should have put Harwood
Oh,
House.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I wouldn't mind going to Castle Howard either. I've never been there. Never been here either. But you know, I misspoke last year. I thought that Harwood House was coal mining money, because many of these, you know, tremendous country palaces had 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 acres, 40,000 acres. And on that land, underneath that land, there was coal. So much of the wealth came from the royalties from the coal, and it would be bituminous, soft coal, not anthracite, not hard coal. And I thought this was one of them, but I did more research, and this money actually came from slavery. This guy was a slave trader. And it's well recognized now. And the current Duke or whatever he is who lives in there, he acknowledges it. And they're trying to, the whole of the UK is struggling to come to terms, well, much of the UK, with the empire. And the empire, it involved, you know, domination and exploitation of resources.
Yep.
And slavery. And there's a movement, you know, to kind of question all that, just like the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States, sort of, you know, the teaching of slavery in an accurate way is controversial. And it's the same with slavery and the empire in general over there. It's just at that point in history, I don't know, a lot of people are doing this. French are doing the same thing, because the French had a pretty good size empire. Well, anyway, that house was built with slave money, with slave trade money. And one of the great slave traders, Carlson, I'm sure that the Redlers know this story from over in Bristol. His statue was up in Bristol for the last, what, I don't know, 100 years. And protesters just threw it into the river, which is right on the Atlantic. I mean, a lot of Pennsylvanians came from Bristol. That's why there's a Bristol near Philadelphia. But it faces the Atlantic. And it was a slave trading capital, Bristol was. And the citizens threw Mr. Carlson into the river. They just dredged him up, and they claim they're going to put him in a museum. But that's the kind of, we just took down, you know, Robert E. Lee from Richmond, Virginia, the leader of the Civil War Army. And we didn't put him in the river, but he's going to be sent off to some museum or so. This is a trend going around in the West, at least. I don't know about, you know, China or whatever. But anyway, I just wanted to correct my statement from last year.
Get back up. Here.
But there are plenty of examples, Bob, of what you were talking about. I mean, you won't have time to visit it, but on the other coast of Scotland, near the Ayr coalfield, is a magnificent house called Dumfries House. and that exactly was built with thousands and thousands of acres, and there were pits and coal underneath the acres that came with the grand house. Exactly what you were talking about, Bob, just a few moments ago.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you won't have time to visit it, but
Next time.
it's a very interesting example of what you're talking about, and no doubt in many other places
Yeah.
in Britain.
Who are back at the National Railway Museum. And as Bob says, you know, it's got the Royal Scotsman there. It's just got the finest collections of steam engines and everything to do with railways, really.
Good. Okay. Is that-
Canal Museum.
Not sure what that is.
The
Yes,
National
Yeah,
Waterways Museum is in
Oh,
the
no,
middle of
it's just-
Gloucester.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's near Gloucester, yes. We're gonna
And
do a canal boat ride, I trust.
well,
Yep.
the boat wouldn't have been ready for you on your visit 2 years ago. It was under restoration, but it is ready this year. So that's
Good, good. I've done this, I've
There's a
done
lot
this ride.
too. Jan and I were there 2
years
years
ago.
ago, 18 months ago. Obviously, when we were hoping that the tour would take place in 2021. And, you know, we were only there for an hour or two, and we wished we could have spent longer than we did. You know, there's plenty to see in the middle of Gloucester. And it's right in the middle of the city. You know, the cathedral's on the doorstep. If you won't probably have time to visit it, but another fine church building in the middle of the city. And you've got this extraordinary interchange between the narrow canal system and the route to the sea, with the docks right in the middle of the city. It's a terrific visit to make. I think you'll really enjoy that.
Oh, wrong button, sorry. There we go.
Well, I'm sure that's very familiar, a sight to Beth and Maddie.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm sure they've both stayed there a few times.
Yes, it's a great hotel. It's right in the
Fabulous
middle,
location.
right across the street from the castle. It's a fabulous location. Really nice.
And yeah, I've walked by it. It looked nice.
Yeah, it is. It's very nice.
And then the days now that you're going to Aberfan, you're going to have a blue badge guide with you for the next 2 days as well. Now, this is Cyfarthia Castle. That's Aberfan. This is Cyfarthia Castle, where the famous Iron Masters money.
Do we all know what Aberfan was?
Yes.
Would you back up to Aberfan,
Sure.
Beth?
There you go.
You will.
Yeah, this is the famous disaster where the coal slag heap, what we in northeastern Pennsylvania call the Culm Bank, the Culm, C-U-L-M, coal waste bank. It was huge, right near the village of Aberfan, and people were worried about it. And it rained and rained and rained, and down came the slag heap and basically buried half the village, including the school, where I was it 100 and some, 200 children died in that, 100 children, something. I forget what it was, but it was a huge scandal and outcry. And it was so bad that the Queen, when this happened in the 1960s, 63, and the Queen made a visit, and Prince Charles made a visit, and I mean, and they're clamoring for attention on this, but alas, it was a tremendous disaster, and Aberfan is seen as the poster child for irresponsible mining, sustainability, if you will, in the UK.
And ironically, Bob, the mines at that time were publicly owned by the government.
Yes.
And there's even less excuse for what's happened. And there are still pit heaps in South Wales, not with quite the acute problem that they had in Aberfan, but there's a lot of concern in some communities elsewhere in South Wales that there could be a major slide of slurry onto buildings and roads and so on. And it's been the progress of removing the pit heaps has been far too slow. And it's an extraordinary thing that 60 years after the disaster, and there are still pit heaps, slag heaps, which really need to be leveled off, and haven't yet been leveled off in South Wales.
Well, this is one of the valleys. This is the Rhondda region of South Wales, where many people came from, where many people emigrated to the United States. And you can see where this is a valley. I mean, we're at one end of the mountain, and you can see the other end. And I don't know if that's the cemetery where the children and the teachers are buried. It could very well be, yeah.
Yes,
but you'll notice the far valley. You notice the greenery up there, and then there's a kind of a bald patch, and then more greenery. Well, that's culm, that's waste. They leveled a lot of that, and then they replanted it. And so when you drive through the Rhondda valleys, we're going to drive through them. There'll be the big pits on one end. The big pit, by the way, is near a town called Bryn Mawr, and we know Bryn Mawr if you're from Mawr. If you're from Pennsylvania, we have a college near Philadelphia named Bryn Mawr. I forget what it means, but I used to know what it meant. Anyway, you'll see all these. You won't even know that they're culm banks. You think that they're just green, sort of green mountains that don't have a lot of growth on them. So they've done a pretty good job. In Pennsylvania, we're trying to remove these all and reburn them in cogeneration plants. We're removing one right now from my hometown of Sawyerville, Pennsylvania, as we speak. They're hauling it 30, 40 miles away to burn it, because there's some combustible material in it, but it's mostly rock. So anyway, I want to point this out as part of the Brits have done a pretty doggone good job of reclamation compared to the United States.
Now, the one thing you need to know is the bus will not be able to get up to this cemetery. They can take us close to it, and we can walk the rest of the way. But anybody who has any problems walking, can just hang out on the bus.
Up the hill.
But it's, of course, up a hill, like everything in Wales. I've never been there. This is one of the places that I've never been.
We've been to
I'm
the
always in a
town.
bus.
We've been to the town.
Yeah, we drove around in the town when Bill and I went with the St. David's from Scranton, trying to find a way up there in the bus, but we just couldn't find a way. So we'll have to walk up.
Yeah.
Right.
It's worth the effort.
I'm
So,
sure.
This is Cyfarthia Castle. This is, okay. It's a museum now, but Fiona Peel, your guide for the day,
I think we did.
Yeah.
this was a visit that should not be missed.
There's a big field down in the front here with picnic lunches.
Mhm.
Got a nice little lunch stop here at the Red Lion for you before you go to Penderyn, the Welsh whiskey distillery.
Mhm.
Opened a new place now in Llandudno, actually, Beth.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
A distillery or just a store?
Yeah. A distillery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and here we are, Newport Transporter Bridge. There's been a lot of money spent on renovating this bridge, and I think it's the one and only kind.
No, there's one in Middlesbrough as well, but when you're in the northeast, you'd be going out of your way a bit to go to the Middlesbrough one, and so it's. I think there's only 2 left in Britain. I'm not sure whether any were built in the US.
Okay. And Bob, have you visited Risca?
I have not. I visited that place, but not this place.
Okay,
No, I'm looking forward to this very much.
okay. Well, I
Where's that
haven't
thing?
been either, so I can't really add in anything.
I know it's a highlight.
Yeah.
Big pity is everything Bob says it is. It's a terrific visit.
At the moment, Beth, you can't go underground, so but hopefully the trips for underground at Big Pits will be back into well, normal way of visits by April, May.
Won't bother me one way or the other. I don't do underground.
There's
No.
plenty of other things you can see, Beth.
Yes,
while
I
you're
know,
at
I know.
You don't
Yeah.
have to do the underground trip.
And
This is one of my favorite places.
yeah.
St. Fagans. I just love St. Fagans. And this actually, I was really glad that I found this particular picture because this is a row of miners' houses and each house is decorated in a different time period. So you start at the end with the 1800s and you go through and you see the changes in the decorations and the furniture up to the 1960s, isn't it?
And the convenience of living.
Yeah.
You can see how
And
hard
these
it
are
was.
their back gardens, and it's just St. Fagans is a wonderful place. All of the buildings were somewhere else in Wales and torn down and brought to this site. It's really very interesting. I love it.
But one thing the Americans are going to discover is that there's a whole lot of saints that we never heard of. I mean, there's, you've maybe heard of St. Pancras, which is a big train station in London. And here's St. Fagans. And I mean, there's a whole series of these medieval and even earlier saints. Say, well, who are these guys? I mentioned the Venerable Bede. He's waiting to be sainted. Well, who's Bede? So be ready for that. There's less street names or even villages or sites like this. Who's St. Fagan?
Okay.
Mint, real mint.
And then this has just been opening in the last 5-6 years. It's the Royal Mint just outside Cardiff. We're going to have a private tour here. And hopefully they'll be able to give us some different coins from different parts of the world that they mince there.
Oh, I thought it was a candy factory. Just kidding.
Looks like it, doesn't it, with a sheep on the front? But I think there's a visit that you will enjoy.
I'm a coin collector, so that'll be a nice place to visit.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Nice. Interesting.
But they do medals and they do coins for different parts of the world.
What
So
happened?
and we lost the last picture. Okay,
Yeah.
that last picture was Cardiff Castle.
Can't you get it back?
Well, I could if I really tried hard.
There.
There it is.
There you go.
Are we going to tour the castle or are we just doing a banquet?
Well, we're on the list to do the banquet and have a tour before.
Okay,
Good.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a medieval banquet at Cardiff Castle, which is where we're going to have our farewell dinner, which is a lot of fun. Two very good friends of mine are actually in charge of the entertainment for the medieval banquet, so we should have a good time. And Cardiff Castle is just gorgeous. It's a fake castle, was built with coal money. But it's fun to walk through and see what he did with the place. And the
Well-
banquet, like I said, is a lot of fun.
Well, the
And
one we're looking at was 18, built in the late 1800s
Yeah.
by a guy named Butte, B-U-T-E.
Mhm.
I don't know if he's tied to Butte, Montana. But anyway, he was a coal
I don't
baron.
know
He was a coal baron and who really basically was the king of Wales for about 30 or 40 years as Cardiff became the world's largest exporting city, coal exporting city, the world's largest. And he built this castle and lived in it. But right on the grounds is the original Cardiff Castle, which
Yeah,
goes
the
back,
Roman-
which goes way back. You know, the keep is still there, up on a hill, up on a mound. So you can you can walk up to the original Cardiff Castle right on the grounds from, I don't know, 1200 or something, way back.
It's a Roman keep, I think.
No, it's not Roman. It was built by the post Henry VIII people.
Ah,
Romans didn't build round keeps. They didn't build round keeps.
So there's part of the main wall that's Roman.
Yeah, they're part of the main walls, and almost in many British cities, including London, are going to be Roman. But anyway, this is new, but you're going to see some really old stuff on those grounds, including Roman walls. Yes, but just you can always tell the Roman walls because the bricks are very thin, and a lot of cement between them.
Thank you for that.
Thank
Sure.
you, Bob.
so show of hands, how many people,
Are going.
if we're able to go, are gonna go this June?
Show hands.
2, 4, 6,
Bodie have a wife.
8,
Two. Bodie has
10.
two.
Okay, great.
Bodie has two.
Bodie has
I may
two.
have
Does
two.
Bob
I may have-
two? All right.
I may.
Okay, good. And gentleman that went on the trip with Bill and I with the St. David's from Scranton, he and his wife are interested. They're on the fence at the moment. They couldn't join us today, but I'm gonna send them the email with all of the pictures from Jan so they can look at it.
And Paul
Yeah.
Shackle is still planning on going.
Yeah,
Oh,
Paul
good.
And his
Shackle
wife.
Good.
and his wife will be going.
Excellent,
Yes.
excellent. Okay.
Our situation is that we were eager for 2 years to go. We're not so eager now. We're still anxious about what's happening. And we are very reluctant to commit ourselves. I guess you need a commitment by February, right?
We have to let the airline know for sure the numbers by March 28th.
Mhm.
Anytime before March 28th, we can reduce the number of people going on the trip without penalty. After the 28th, there would be. a penalty.
So you say that the deadline is since March.
It's like the middle of March. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's the same with the hotels, Beth.
Is it the middle of March?
Yeah, pretty much
Yeah.
exactly the same deadline.
Okay, good.
So
And
how many did you say you have at the moment?
Pardon?
4, 6, 8, 10,
I had 11 or 12.
11.
I think it's 12. I think
12.
it's 12.
So
Is
we
Paul
could get-
is Paul Shackle going alone or is he going with
Simple fine.
someone else?
Paul's going with his wife.
That's 14.
I
Okay,
heard,
so that would be
I've heard from
14.
Paul.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why he's not here. But I think that will get a couple more. I know Richard Fitzsimmons has been on the fence. I'm hoping we can get back to our original numbers of what was it, 18, 19.
Yeah, that
That's
would
a
be great. That would be
that's a
great.
good number. I mean, we can get a small bus because we are going to be going from coach from Edinburgh on down. And then there are different sized buses, and I'm sure that the Reelers will get us a smaller coach for a smaller group.
I think when in the next 6 weeks, the world will see lots of changes.
Yeah.
You know, people are going to be starting to travel and getting confidence. You know, I think it's only Canada with us that's very sluggish on joining up
Yeah.
for anything at the moment. You know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can certainly understand people being nervous and worried about it. You know, we're all worried.
Yeah.
We're all worried about it, and we certainly don't want to take any chances with anybody's health. And if you're not comfortable, then you have to do whatever is
Whatever
best
is right for you.
whatever you think is best for you.
Yeah.
Well, our worry is government policies and everything else that could disrupt your stay.
Yes, well, there is that too.
Yeah, I have a question. Having just, like I said, we traveled to Iceland in September and had to jump through various hoops, which we managed to do. If at the time of the trip, which is maybe the case now, I don't know by then, if the UK requires you, obviously, vaccinations, boosters, things like that. But when you get there, it sounded like on day 2, you need a COVID test, and then you need a COVID test to come back to the United States. Is that something that obviously we would pay for it, but that the tour leaders can set that up for us to do as a group, because there's no way to us to do it in 10 different directions.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I think a lot of that testing is going to be pretty much gone by the time you're traveling in June. I mean, some of it's gone already, and they've replaced the expensive, we call them PCR tests.
Yeah, that's what they call them here.
Mhm.
With a lateral flow test, which is much simpler and gives you a result in 15-20 minutes. And the need to isolate has definitely been removed in the UK. So if you've had all the vaccinations, you might still have to do a lateral flow test after you've arrived, but I think even that requirement may have gone.
Do
there's
you
been a very
know what the protocol is to get back into the United States? Would we have to do a test before we left Wales?
I'm not sure I'm up to speed, Beth, with the Department of Homeland Security requirements. But I don't think they're too onerous, but you'd probably know that better than we do.
We can check that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to do that to come back from Iceland, and we did it at the bus station and had to be so far in advance like that. But it was the antigen lateral flow type of thing, and they gave you the results and a QR code that you put on your phone or whatever. And so that was, and we had to pay for it out of pocket, except the agent there then said, actually, the Icelandic Parliament had just decided to cover the costs of those tests. And so we got reimbursed a couple $100
Nice.
for what we had paid for out of pocket. And but that was the requirements in the fall to come back in the United States.
Yeah.
I think it still is, but like you said, it may go away because of this whole thing is shifting.
If it is a requirement, would you guys be able to set up, enough
Yes.
tests for all of us to do
Yes.
before we leave
And
Wales? Okay.
particularly Beth, as you're flying back from Heathrow, I'm sure that if it's a requirement, you can do it at Heathrow, or if it's got to be done, say 48 hours beforehand, we can arrange for it in Cardiff.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If it has to be done, you take the bus to take us all to some health clinic, we all get off and get it done, and we pay for it, but you arrange it, and then we're all good to go.
I'm sure we can do that. I say all the indications at the moment at the end of January are that all governments, except, as Jan says, the Canadians, who seem to be stuck in 2020. All governments are pretty keen to see these. I noticed that the Irish government in the Republic of Ireland has massively relaxed travel restrictions and testing requirements just in the last few days. And, of course, because the Irish economy depends massively on visitors, particularly from the US. So I think all governments are moving in that direction, and hopefully the Canadians will catch up. But we need to keep a close watch on it. And if there is a testing requirement, we will make sure that that's all done either in Cardiff or at Heathrow.
We'll keep Beth up to date with what's happening here.
I have another question. Like I said, when we were in Iceland, our rental vehicle had a Wi-Fi thing, and so we didn't have to activate our personal cell phones at $10 a day for the whole trip.
I will
Is
check.
it possible to get a Wi-Fi device in the front of the bus that we could all use our phones with and not have to activate all our personal cell phones, daily data charges?
I'll get in touch with the bus company and update us on that one.
It's getting more and more common, I know, for coaches to have Wi-Fi. Yeah.
And you can imagine, Bob, there's a lot of competition in the coach companies at the moment. They've had 2 pretty thin years. So they'll be wanting to make it a really attractive package for the traveller.
Tell me, is the Clark's company still in Shrewsbury? Clark's coaches still in Shrewsbury?
Yes, I think they are.
Yeah, it's not one of the big companies, Bob, but
No.
I think they are, sir. Yeah.
They once took us around the continent with a group of students for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I looked at the side of the bus 1,000 times, Clark's of Shrewsbury. So I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
I've got a good bus story. When I did the mining history conference in 2005 in Scranton, I hired a bus for a bus trip to go over to the New Jersey zinc mines over in New Jersey. And about, I don't know, 3-4 months before, and it was like $700 for the bus for the day. 3 or 4 months before our trip, I got a call from the bus company. They had burned down in a fire. The whole bus thing had burned down in a fire. So then I had to find another bus company, and so now it cost me $1,000 to get a bus company to do it. So the day of the trip, we were all meeting at the Lackawanna Heritage Center, Valley Heritage Center or whatever. And I did not have a plan B. A third bus company showed up. They had subcontracted out that thing to another bus company. And so I didn't really know what, if they hadn't shown up, I wouldn't have known on a Sunday who to call, how to do anything. I was on a little bit edge there, but it all worked out.
Well, on the whole, if I can reassure you, we deal with fairly large coach companies. We had a group in Wales actually last July, and somehow or another the coach got damaged. Well, the company produced another coach in an hour or two. There was a bit of a delay, but the damaged coach was replaced without too much hassle. I mean, the very small companies, that could be a problem, but the companies, I mean, there's an excellent company that we're going to use in Scotland. We've used them plenty of times, and they're large enough to have spare coaches and spare drivers.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Anybody else have any questions?
I have one more question. I think we already made a deposit and a first payment And so I guess someone's been keeping track of that and we'll have a sort of a balance due type of thing at some point, or more payments.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a
Bodie and, the heck is her name?
Vivian.
Vivian. I knew it started
Vivian,
with
that's
V.
okay.
So yeah, so the museum is
Have been
handling the
keeping
finance.
track of all of the finances. and,
Okay.
So we'll.
Question.
Good question. Who is the treasurer of this outfit?
The treasurer of the museum.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm
No.
being,
Well, yeah, we're holding, right now, we're holding $10,000 in deposits with at the museum nonprofit. Beth said we might need to write a check next month, which we'll do.
No, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow? Okay, well, we'll talk tomorrow. So yeah, so everything's being, run through our nonprofit, which handles all the money for the support of the museum.
And the Anthracite Heritage Museum is the official sponsor of this tour.
Yes.
And that's, and that's good, good to know that, good to have
Here's
that.
here's a question. First deposit was $1,000 and that, if you're two, it's supposed to be eerie, getting back. However, the last 2 years, the trip didn't run. So if you do decide to not go, is that money lost? Or is there a discount on it since the last 2 years we had a problem?
Bodie do this.
Do you want to address that, Bodie?
Well, I think that when it was initially set up, it was non-refundable deposit for the trip. I think if there's a way to recoup the money, if we get additional people going, then we could certainly look into that. We're not making money. This isn't there's a small contribution going to the museum, but we're not running this as a fundraising trip. So I think the idea was the money was non-refundable initially, so we could make the deposits and the reservations that we needed to up front. And I think we did make some. We did. It's been 2 years now, but we did pay some amount early on, and we have some other expenses coming up now. But I think the idea was that if we could replace, the people that don't go that pay deposits, we would refund the money.
I think the first deposit was 500, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Per person, yes.
Yeah, per person.
And
But
when
that's
do
def-
we need to send Jan some more money?
I think not till the end of March.
Okay.
Beth.
Okay. So the end of March really is the
Drop dead.
definite
Drop dead.
drop dead date.
Snowing a little bit.
I have a question. I wonder if there's a brochure, if somebody could, I'd like to promote this a little bit. I'm a federal retiree. Sally Davies just retired from the state of Maryland a few years ago. Maybe we could figure out a way to try to drum up some more interest.
That would be terrific. The brochure that we have is from the original tour, which this tour looks nothing like that one. I can put together one for you and email it to you, and if you want me to email it to you and you print it out, I can do that, or I can
That'd be
print
good.
it here and then send you the hard copy, whatever you want to do.
And, Beth, we can also put it on the website.
Yeah.
And then you could direct people to the website to look for information.
Right, okay.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Beth, because I will also promote it. I'll also
Okay.
promote it. This message went out to a couple thousand people, so people know it's out there. But I think a lot of people that I spoke to, well, some people that I spoke to, are concerned about the virus.
Sure.
So you can understand that. We don't know what it's going to be like in June. I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I mean, my wife and I may go over by ourselves, which we've often done, if this trip doesn't materialize.
Yeah,
But-
I seriously want to put a mask on and go.
Yeah.
And
We're the same. We can't wait.
We've already packed. We're already drinking tea and we're brushing up on our English.
All right.
Hope you get lessons.
I wonder if Saul's gonna bring a ukulele or something.
Well, I've got a couple of songs, coal mining songs. But it's only for the bus. It's only when people sing on the bus.
What's
I
his
wonder,
name?
just out of curiosity, I'd ask the Redlers this, or if someone knows. Today in Washington, I haven't turned on the news, but supposedly there's thousands of people marching here for an anti-vaxxer, anti-mask thing. Do you have something like that going on in the UK?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean
Yep.
the anti-vaxxer crazies are not just in the United States?
No,
My question.
Australia, the continent, Germany, France, it's
I don't know
quite
what's the matter
widespread.
with these people.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
Doesn't make
Okay.
any sense to me.
Well, we're all
Mask.
jammed up anyway.
Okay, so, Bodie and Bob, we can talk by email in the
Right,
next
thank you.
Yeah.
24
I'll look-
hours, so we can
Is the
get that
flight
money
still
out to
out?
the,
Is the flight still out of Philadelphia?
no, it's out of Newark.
Okay, okay.
Out of Newark. And the one change, I've dealt with a company called Travel World in Scranton. And they would hold a certain number of seats for me with no deposit. The airlines have now changed that to sign the contract. Travel World has to give them a $300 non-refundable deposit to hold these, not $300 a person, $300 total deposit to hold the seats for us. And like I said, the last date that we can change it is March 28th. And if we want to lower the number of people that are going, we can, but it has to be at least 10 people going. That's the lowest number they will accept. So, I'm going to talk to Bodie and Bob and they'll send out that check tomorrow or Tuesday, because it has to be there before the 1st. They have to sign the contract before the 1st for the
And we
airline.
talked last year, saying like we'll be able to leave our vehicles at the museum or somewhere safe, secure nearby.
Yes, we can designate a section of the parking lot at the museum
Okay.
for the cars in Scranton.
And then the bus will pick us up there. And take us to the airport.
And is it nonstop to Edinburgh, right?
Yes,
And nonstop from Heathrow
yes,
back to
Yes.
where?
back to Newark.
Back
And the
to
bus will pick us up in Newark.
Sounds good.
Okay, anybody else got any questions? All right, well, it's good to see everybody, and I hope the next time we see you, it'll be in person and we'll be on our way.
Here, here.
Sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Keep making those Welsh cookies, please.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Riddlers.
Bye.